Geno Smith, despite it all, did have 316 passing yards, but last night was his 9th career game with 2 or more picks. He leads the NFL with 6 pick sixes in the last 2 years. Here's Rex Ryan and Geno Smith after the game.
I feel good about this football team, and I feel good about Geno Smith. I just, was it perfect? Absolutely wasn't. But we're gonna focus on getting better as a football team.
I've got to make sure that when we get down in that red zone, we were 1 for 6 today, and that's completely awful. We don't expect to ever go 1 for 6 because we hold ourselves to a high standard, and it starts with me.
Rex says he likes Geno, but Skip, do you? Have you given up on Geno yet?
Stephen A., I can't give up on Geno because I never bought into Geno to start with. Here's my bottom line, and I feel more strongly, obviously, than ever off last night's performance. I think that Geno, with his throwing talent, will always tease Jets fans into hanging in, but ultimately, Geno's inability to play quarterback, his overall command of the quarterback position, will ultimately frustrate and disappoint Jets fans. I believe that Michael Vick, if inserted early enough last night, would have pulled off the comeback, an electric comeback in that game that I think was made for a Michael Vick. And I just believe that going forward with Geno, and I know he's Idzik's guy, which makes him Rex's guy because now Rex is hanging on with Idzik. I just think that when you think of Geno going forward, the first word that usually will pop into your head is shaky. I'm talking about consistent decision-making, consistent playmaking, feel for the position. I don't see enough of that from Geno. Obviously, his 2 interceptions last night came at killer times, and when it looked like they had a chance late to get back in the game again and again, Geno came up pretty small. I think he's a decent kid. He always says the right things after the game. He took the blame for 1 out of 6 in the red zone. But I'm sorry, just my bottom line gut feeling is that Michael Vick, if he had been the starting quarterback from the start this year, would have turned the Jets into at least a playoff contender. Going forward for the rest of this year, with Geno as a starting quarterback, they do not have a chance of making the playoffs.
Skip Bayless, I'm not going to be as hard on Geno Smith as you are. I respect where you're coming from because your position on him has been incredibly consistent. You were definitely, even when he was a Heisman Trophy candidate, completing more than 70% of his passes at West Virginia over those first 6 games. I recall you even back then having a wait-and-see approach because you simply wasn't sold. And then he collapsed over the last 5 or 6 games because they had the worst defense in America, as far as I'm concerned, at West Virginia at that particular juncture. And then the team just became unrattled, and you saw him on the sideline appearing to be unrattled, appearing to become unraveled. I get all of that. I understand that. But again, I hearken back to the personnel that you have to work with because I think when you're a young quarterback, you've got to have something to work with, Skip Bayless, especially when your coach is known to primarily focus on defense. He's not the most offensive dude in the world. I know Marty Mornhinweg is there as the offensive coordinator. I know the pedigree that he has coming over from Philadelphia, being associated with the NFL for as long as he has. I get all of that. But at the same time, you go where your head coach takes you. And we all know that Rex Ryan cares far more about defense than anything else because that's his specialty. So when we look at it from that perspective and we see the level of dysfunctionality that has sifted through the Jets organization like a virus when it comes to picking the appropriate personnel on the offensive side of the ball, I definitely think that you've got to take those things into consideration. Let's look at Geno and what he's had to work with. Santonio Holmes was supposed to be a #1 offensive option before. He was there. He was barely there last year. Jeremy Curley, who was a slot receiver and a #3 guy, a quality #3 guy, was essentially elevated to being your #1 guy by default because of the lack of bodies that the Jets had available to them at their disposal in year 1 under Geno Smith. At that particular moment in time, what did he do? He completed just 55% of his passes. He's shown some athleticism. We know he can make the throws. His decision-making is questionable, and we get all of that. But at the same time, when you're surrounded with the appropriate level of talent, then that kind of helps you. So what do? Again, they pass up on the James Jones and all the guys that I had mentioned previously, the Golden Tates of the world, the Emmanuel Sanders of the world. They didn't go after any marquee guys. Their definition of a marquee guy was Eric Decker. And I keep telling you, there's an AP CPB out still for him because we know that he showed up at the Super Bowl because we saw a quote from him before the game. We heard a quote from him after the game. But during those 60 minutes against Seattle, we couldn't find him. Last night, it's Monday Night Football. Same environment, same confines. He's got a hamstring injury. He's got to go out. So what do you have if you're Geno Smith? John Idzik hasn't given Rex Ryan and Marty Mornhinweg much to work with. They talked about Chris Ivory and Chris Johnson. Even though they're a formidable running team and Chicago was ranked 27th against the rush, that was supposed to be something that worked to the Jets' advantage. They were still incapable of running the football effectively last night. So you can't run the football. You don't have the bodies to throw the football, but you've got a second-year quarterback that's starving to make a name for himself because he was ranked 32 in the league according to prognosticators who gauged quarterbacks and what they bring to the table. A Ryan Fitzpatrick and a Chad Henne was elevated against him in stature. You get a young guy with that level of confidence who's going to have an ego. He's going to have a lot to prove. And if he's going to be on a mission to prove something, sometimes he's going to make those mistakes, especially when he doesn't have game breakers and game changers out there on the field with him. So that's not to absolve Geno Smith completely, Skip. I get the fact that it's on him, but at the same time, it's not all on him. And when I look at his talent, I see a guy that could make some things happen. He's going to have a lot to prove, there's no doubt, but he's got the talent. He's got the arm strength. He can make the throws. He's got the athleticism and the evasive skills to be productive if you can just reel him in and get him to make the right decisions. He's not impressive, but he is completing 63% of his passes compared to 55% last year, even though his QBR is at a 33 right now. I just believe that the jury is still out on Geno Smith, and I'd like to see him have more talent to work with before I close the book on him.
Okay, those are all fair points. But I ask you, Stephen A. Smith, as you watched this game last night, did not one thought cross your mind? Michael Vick ought to be in there right now? Did you think about it?
I'm a person that felt like Michael Vick should have been starting the season.
Thank you.
So, I mean, I don't disagree with you there. But even if Michael Vick was the starter and played every down of every game this season, Geno Smith still, to me, has a future because his talent mandates that.
Okay, bottom line for me, maybe he will keep getting better, Geno Smith, but I doubt it.